Hello everyone. Today we're working on Module 2, Lesson 22. We'll be dividing 3 and 4-digit dividends by 2-digit divisors, and since our dividends are a little bit larger this time, our quotients will also be larger. They'll have 2 or 3 digits in the quotient. Let's start off with 590 divided by 17. We are going to follow our 3-step process that we've been working on the last couple of days. So the first thing we're going to do is estimate. And I am going to round 17 to 20. And I need to find a compatible number that 20 will go into. So I think that 590 will round to a 600. And I'm going to think of this as 60 tens divided by 2 tens, and that is going to equal 30. So now when I move over here to my solve, I'm going to set it up 590 divided by 17, and I'm going to use this 30 as to place my first digit. I'm not going to write 3 and 0 down. I'm just going to put the 3 in the tens place to show that my first digit should be 3 tens. And then I'm going to multiply 3 times 71, 3 times 17, and 3 times 17 is 51. And there are 2 ways I can think of this. Some people like to pretend like the ones place just does not exist, and they just put the 51 down there. I personally like to remind myself that this is not 3 ones, but 3 tens times 17. And so that means that I have 51 tens. And I'm going to go ahead and put that 0 in the ones place because for me, it helps me keep everything lined up if I have a digit in every place. But it doesn't really matter if you don't want to put that 0 in the ones place and it's there in your brain and you're neat and you can easily keep things lined up without the 0, then don't bother putting it down. So now I'm going to subtract, and 0 minus 0 is 0, 9 minus 1 is 8, and 5 minus 5 is 0, and I'm not going to put that 0 now. So here's where it gets tricky if you use my method of putting the zeros down in the ones place. It looks like right now my remainder is larger than 17, but I want you to remember that we're working with tens, and I have only 8 tens left. I do not have 17 tens. I have only 8 tens left over, so that means that this is not too large, and it's okay to move on to the next step. Now I'm going to have to do a little bit of mini estimating in my mind. Now I have to decide how many times will 17 go into that 80. And I can work it out specifically by rounding. I'm going to round 17 to 20 again. And then, of course, this 80 right here can just stay an 80. And, of course, 80 divided by 20 will equal 4. So that seems like a good guess for the digit in my ones place. 4 times 17 is going to be a little less than 80 since 17 is a little less than 20. And 4 times 7 is 28. I'm going to carry that 2, and 4 times 1 is 4, plus this 2 will give me a total of 6 in the tens place. And when I subtract, I'm going to have to borrow from the tens place up here, so I'll have 7 tens plus 1 10, and 1 10 minus 8 is 2, and then 7 tens minus 6 is going to be 1. So I have 12 as my remainder. I'm going to look up here my divisor, make sure that my remainder is less than my divisor, and yes it is. So I'm going to put remainder 12. So on to my check. First is the first thing I have to do is multiply the whole number in my quotient times the divisor. So 34 times 17. 7 times 4 is 28. I carry that 2. 7 times 3 is 21, plus 2 is 23. And then I'm going to remember that this is 110, not just a 1, so I need a 0 in the tens place. And 110 times 34 will be 340. I'll add those together, and I get 578. And then I have to add on that remainder. So over here, I'll put 578 plus 12. 8 plus 2 is 10. 7 plus 1 is 8, plus that other 1 is 9, and 5 plus 0 is 5. So I come out with 590. I look up here and say it's the same, so it checks. And that means I can go ahead and write my answer down. 34, remainder 12. Now it's your turn to try one. You're going to divide 487 by 21. Make sure you go through all the steps in the process. First, you will estimate to place the first digit in the quotient. Then you will solve by using the standard algorithm and make any adjustments necessary if your estimate was not correct. And then you'll have to estimate again to figure out what the second digit in your quotient is, and if there's any remainder. And then finally, you will check by multiplying the whole number in your quotient by the divisor and adding the remainder in, and make sure that the answer you get is the same as the dividend, 487, in the original equation. And if it is, then you know you're correct. If it's not the same, you need to go back and look at all your work and decide where you made a mistake and how to fix it. Then write your answer on the Edpuzzle quiz, please. Okay, let's try this one. 839 divided by 41. So first of all, we're going to estimate by rounding that divisor to 40. And it looks like 839, a nice compatible number would be 800. So 800 divided by 40. I could also think of this as 80 tens divided by 4 tens, and that's going to equal 20. 80 divided by 4 is 20. So when I go to solve, 839 divided by 41, I know that I have a 20, but I'm only going to write the 2 in the tens place. I know I have 2 tens. I'm not sure what's going to wind up in the ones place yet, but I know that that 2 is likely going to be the correct answer in the tens place. And 2 times 41 is 82. And here is where you have an option. Since this is 2 tens times 41, you may want to put the 0 in the ones place. This time I'm not going to do it that way. I'm just going to go ahead and subtract. And I have 83 minus 82, and that leaves me with 110 left over. And then I also need to bring down this 9. And I can look and see that 41 is 19 will not go, sorry, 41 will not go into 19 because it's larger than 19. So that means that it will go 0 times, and of course 0 times 41 is 0, and I subtract, and I'm going to have 19 left over as my remainder. So my answer will be 20 remainder 19 if my check works out. So let's move over to the check, and step 1 is to multiply a whole number in the quotient times the divisor. So 41 times 20 is going to be 2 times 1 is 2, 2 times 4 is 8, so 820. And I put that 0 in the ones place right off the bat because the 2 here is in the tens place, not the ones place. Part 2, adding the remainder, so 820 plus 19. 0 plus 9 is 9, 2 plus 1 is 3, and 8 plus 0 is 8. So my check is 839. I'm going to compare it up here, and it checks out. So I'm going to go ahead and write my answer up at the top, 20 remainder 19. Okay, now it's your turn. 908 divided by 56. Remember to round and find an estimate and round the divisor first. And that your estimate will place the number in the tens place. It won't give you the whole answer, but it will give you the first digit in your quotient. And then you will multiply, subtract, and when you look at what's left over for your remainder, then you need to see if you can continue by estimating a digit in the ones place and multiplying and subtracting there to find your final remainder. Then, of course, you'll do your check at the end and make sure that the answer to your check matches the dividend, 908. If it doesn't, go back and figure out where you went wrong. Sometimes it seems tedious, but you will actually learn a lot. If you make a mistake and you go out and you go back and find out where your mistake was, you really learn not to make that mistake anymore. If you just give up and move on, you're going to keep making the same kinds of mistakes over and over again. But if you can find your own mistake and correct it, it's a much better learning experience than if I find a mistake for you and tell you how to fix it. So please take the time to do that. Then write your answer on the Edpuzzle quiz, and that'll be it for this evening. I'll see you in class tomorrow.